Welcome to the bunker.
Preppers, survivalists, off-gridders, homesteaders, and the like. Welcome to Top's Bunker, a podcast for preppers. Email shtf@topsbunker.com, website topsbunker.com, YouTube, Top's Bunker podcast channel, and of course, X and Instagram. Please check the show notes in your podcast player for a link to help support the show. There you'll find valuable products and gear and extra info on this episode. Also, please visit and join Top's Bunker Facebook group. You'll love the interaction with other preppers and like-minded folks. I want to thank y'all for joining us. We've got a great show for you. Tonight, we have a very special guest with us. He needs no introduction, and my guess is he would not ask for one and couldn't care less if we got one, but he's going to get one anyway. T.J. Morris, a.k.a. Bear from Bear Independent, is here with us tonight. We are so grateful that he was able to carve out some time from his busy schedule to be with us. And when I say busy, I ain't kidding. The Bear Independent channel on YouTube, the Bear Independent podcast, Refuge Medical, Grindstone Ministries, Kaleb House, and on top of all these successful businesses, a husband, a dad, a community leader, and a man of faith. So why did we invite Bear to the show? Well, right there on the Grindstone Ministries logo, it reads Proverbs 27:17. As iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. Bear, it's an honor to have you with us. Welcome to the show, brother.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, me too.
Did we miss anything there? I mean,
it's hard to keep track of these days, bro. I'm also an ordained pastor, which I did not believe at all that was ever going to be in the cards for me. Yet here we are. So, and I used to play drums in heavy metal bands back in the day. So I've cut a few albums, toured all across the country, done all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
I did see some videos of you playing the drums. Pretty cool. I'm a guitarist myself, and I was in lots of metal bands.
Awesome. Okay. So what's your amplifier of choice?
Marshall Stack all the way.
Okay. Like JCM 800, 900.
It's been a long time since I owned one, so I don't know what's right these days.
Well, I mean, what's right is whatever you want.
And I'm a fan of crunch, not like Boston. You remember the band Boston? Not like more crunch like Metallica.
Okay, that's cool. The metal that I used to play was so metal that other metalheads would come up to me and be like, "Are you okay, bro? Like, do you need to talk to somebody?" So, yeah, I a lot of like black metal and extreme death metal and stuff like that, like Satyricon and Dimmu Borgir and Emperor and Belphegor and like all this stuff that just, you're getting warmed up at 300 beats per minute. So,
and now you're a pastor.
Now I'm a pastor. I like I said, I didn't think it was in the life arc for me, but the blood of the Lamb is significantly powerful. So here we are.
Well, I know that Buddy wanted to talk about what a civil war would look like in the U.S., and I would too. I would love to hear somebody's perspective on that. Before we ask that, I don't think that's going to take up much time. Before we ask that question, let's talk about Grindstone Ministries and Kaleb House. I know your other stuff. We can talk about that too. But those two there, what are they? What you got going on there?
So Grindstone Ministries is a pro bono disaster relief agency. We have the same licensure and authority as the American Red Cross, which means we get to go wherever we want to go and do whatever we want to do. And because we don't take a dime of federal funding, we don't have any conflicts of interest and we don't have to jump through any hoops. We just show up and help people. And that started about 6 years ago. I got an email from a guy named the Reverend Gilbert Abreu after Hurricane Michael in North Florida, out in the Panhandle. And it was 5 months after the hurricane. And he said, "Bear, we need help. It looks like the storm happened yesterday." And so I spent about 5 minutes on the phone with him. And I said, "All right, I'm coming." Never met this guy before, never talked to him in my life, but I could feel the conviction of the spirit. And so I talked to my Patreon community and I raised about $3,000, rented a minivan. I had 3,000 pounds of food to bring with me and This 3,000-mile round trip, blah, blah, blah. It just kept coming up 333, right? I get out there. It's me and 32 other volunteers from the Bear Nation. We fed 3,000 people over the course of 3 days. Come home, and I still had $3,000 in the bank, even though I had spent every dime of that money. I'm like, oh, we got a loaves and fishes thing going on here. That's pretty cool. And so then a brother of mine from church was like, hey, that thing you did in Florida is really cool. When are you going back? And I hadn't planned on going back, but I was like, I don't know. Let's compare schedules. So we went back again. And then Grindstone was born. And so we've now deployed, I believe, right about 60 times in the last pushing 6 years now, from Mayfield, Kentucky, hurricane to Hurricane Helene, to, we were just down in the Central Texas flooding, and then had a team out in Jamaica. And we just help people, man. We do debris remediation, rebuild homes, feed people. And what's really cool is we get a lot of vets and a fair number of soft vets as well. And so these guys show up and they're looking for a mission, they're looking for a purpose, they want to use the skills and talents that they've spent a lifetime investing in and honing. And then all of a sudden there's this external stimulus, which is this crisis, and it's like, okay, and go. And so, like in Hurricane Helene, we were running cross-border operations, sea, air, and land, right, in order to get from eastern Tennessee into western North Carolina, because the governor of North Carolina wouldn't declare a state of emergency, and so we weren't technically permitted in. But we were using helos and dropping in. We were crossing rivers. We were hiking in Starlinks to people, and it's a blast. And so that's what Grindstone does. That's grindstoneministries.com if anybody wants to connect and join up. And then Kaleb House with a K. Kaleb House was born out of a Grindstone deployment that we did. We were in between storm seasons, and we get bored easy. I guess you'd call that ADHD or something. And so when there's no tornadoes, we get wiggly and we got to do something. And so we were working at this place that was a restoration facility for juvenile human trafficking survivors. And it started with, hey, the floors in one building on one side of the building are a little soft. Can you come in here and maybe fix the floors? Sure. Well, we scope creeped to everything. Where 6 weeks later, we've touched every building on property, and the power coming in, and the sewer going out, and the water lines coming in, and wells, and just everything we could touch. And day after day, it's miracle after miracle, literally, of just provision and blessing to get this stuff done. And the second to last day, I'm walking out of this one building that we were using as a bunkhouse, and it's a cool, beautiful morning, clear sky, and I'm looking up the sky, and I'm talking to Dad, and I'm like, this is so cool what you're doing here. And he's amping me up. He's like, yeah. I'm like, this is awesome. He's like, yeah. I was like, man, this is so important. And he's like, yeah. I was like, there's got to be more places like this. And he goes, yeah. And you're going to build them. What? I'm going to build. What? I'm like, I don't know shit about counter trafficking. I don't know nothing. Right. And so now here I'm standing in the middle of this green space at this facility with my arms raised to the sky, arguing with the creator of the universe, going, sir, I don't know anything about counter trafficking. And he says to me, you build the buildings, I'll handle the rest. I said, okay. So we got done with that deployment. I get home and I'm in my Tuesday morning executive meeting with all my staff. And we have on a big whiteboard was written, no new projects. And I'm like, hey guys, I know we said no new projects, but I'm going to need another 501c3, and we need to constitute another board. And we're now in the juvenile counter trafficking space. And so my whole executive team is like, what are you talking about? And so I relate this story to them. And so Kaleb House was born, and there's a lot of other details in there, but that's the story in a nutshell. And so we started Kaleb House because the critical need in counter trafficking is actually restoration. There's 77,000 Customs and Border Patrol beds for illegal immigrants right now in the country, and there's only 420 beds for juvenile human trafficking survivors across the country. And that's just a number. The actuality is about 80 beds nationwide. Otherwise, the kids end up back in the foster system, which is a contributing factor in the problem in the first place, or they become property of the state. And so we needed a place that again, privately funded, no government money, no hoops to jump through, that we could take these kiddos that have been through absolute tragedy and break the cycle, break the generational curses, and provide some standoff here so that healing can occur. And when we first entered the space, my perception was, there's lots of people that are doing rescue, nobody's doing recovery. And having been in the space for half a decade now, it turns out there's lots of people talking about rescue. There's very few people actually doing it, and there's even fewer people doing recovery. And so we reluctantly got into the rescue side of the game as well. And we've had all kinds of partners, very, we'll just say quiet professionals who have come on their own time and on their own dime, taken leave from whatever unit they happen to be at the time, and show up and help us do what we do. And it's been incredibly humbling. And I'm very thankful that the Father meets us where we're at, because he told me to build buildings. And it turns out that's like a half of 1% of what's actually involved in all of this. So that's what we do with Kaleb House, kalebhouse.org.
So you build the space for children that were trafficked to come and start over?
Yeah, that's correct. And so, like right now, we have a network of safe sites. Where and how many is classified, right? But we have a network of safe sites where we have children, and in some cases, mothers and their children who have all been recovered together. And then what we're in the process of building right now is our restoration facility. So think of it as like a campus where we're using the care house model. And so a neighborhood in the woods that is removed from all external threats, that has dedicated professionals on site, trauma therapists and program directors and doctors and teachers. But these kids also get their own bed, their own backyard, their own clothes, uh, their own mom in some cases. And if, you hear a lot like, we got to get these kids back to their parents. And man, in 2/3 of the cases, the parents are the problem. I mean, I can't give you details, but we just worked a case here in Oklahoma where, suffice to say, mom and dad were the primary offenders, and they skipped town and they left the kid with grandpa. And when the kid was recovered, grandpa was in the process of preparing a grave for the kid so that he could murder the kid to get rid of the evidence.
Holy shit.
Oh, and that's Tuesday, bro.
Oh, man.
Yeah. And so we want to make sure that we do as much bad shit to bad people as possible, while also taking these kiddos who have been through literal hell and then giving a place where they're never going to have to deal with that again, ever. And we don't have a timeline on our program. It's not like, hey man, you got 12 months to get your poop in a group or you got to get out of here. It's like however long it takes. And we've had children as young as 1 year old in our care. Um, and so, and we've also, praised the Most High, we've had many children that have graduated from our program, are now young adults and are getting on with their lives. And so we have a network of safe sites. We're also building our facility right now, our campus right now. We're currently working with the Attorney General's office in the state that we're in order to, not just for licensure, which is a whole thing for bringing people onto a dedicated campus, but it's also, what's really cool is, back to the point of, nobody's doing this. We don't really know what right looks like, and neither does the Attorney General's office. And they're like, we got a document about what we think right looks like, but we need to get with somebody like y'all who are actually doing it, and let's compare notes. And so we've been very blessed to have an excellent working relationship with the Attorney General in our state, so that we're kind of writing the manual as we go, because there's nothing to refer to as far as best practices are concerned, or how do we mitigate liability, or what does a real wraparound approach to take care of these kids mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, educationally, financially, what does that actually look like? Because nobody's doing it. And so the best frame of reference I can come up to is like, these are children and we are parents, and we're just going to raise these kids like you would raise a kid. And some days we're going to have great days, and other days they're not going to be so great. And that's okay, because we love them And I'm commanded to raise these kids up in the way that they should go so they do not depart from it when they are older. And that's that process of breaking that generational curse. Because what happens, bro, is hurt people hurt people. And I don't want these kiddos, A, to have to live with that hurt, and B, I don't want to have to target them later because each offender, this statistic will blow your mind. Each offender is statistically responsible for 82 victims, not offenses, victims.
Oh, trickle down effect.
Right. And so let's put these kids back together so that they don't repeat these patterns of behavior that they learned at a very young age. And they do live a righteous and wholesome life to the best of their ability, to where this becomes part of their witness and their testimony. It's not a stumbling block that breaks them for the remainder of their days.
So this is not just about facilities and spaces and sites. I mean, you've got to have staff.
Mm-hmm.
You got staff, you got food, you got hygiene, utilities, all of this stuff. So I'm assuming you've got a pretty big staff that handles all this.
We do. And we have multiple teams, everybody from spooky guys in bushes doing close target reconnaissance out to program directors and house parents and trauma therapists and legal, educational, and it's yeah, man, it's a lot of people.
All doing it as a charity.
Correct, and all privately funded because there's things, you have hoops to jump through when you take federal and state money. Like we're not going to do gender affirming care at Kaleb House, and so I'm not taking any of that money. you know. So yeah, and it's been an absolute blessing. We've always gotten everything we needed and most of what we wanted right in the Father's perfect timing. And so we're blessed with provision and protection, and it has created the latitude for us to be able to operate and just ask ourselves daily, what's the right thing and how do we do that, and then how do we do more of that.
Have you ever thought about going for help and assistance, going the federal route or even the executive branch route?
So I won't lie, I've reached out to the executive branch both during the 45th presidency and the 47th presidency, and have gotten nothing but crickets. Um, and there's complications there. I mean, DHS recently announced that they recovered 70,000 missing children, and myself, frankly, I don't believe that for a minute. And I don't know. They might have got seven. I don't think they got 70,000 because
Where would 70,000 go?
not only that, but no one, no one has heard a ripple about it. On the back end, the people that do what I do, not one person knows anything about it, and that means it was either incredibly well compartmentalized, which is a rarity for the federal government, or it didn't actually happen.
Right.
So yeah, and again, you take federal money, you play federal games. You take state money, you have to play state games, and um, and even with grants, there's a lot of stipulations with grant monies that they have to be dispersed in a specific way, or that they have to be used for a program. For example, you can use 80% of this grant for general operational expenses, but 20% of the grant has to be used for explaining why it's okay to feel like a unicorn today and shit in a litter box. It's like, nope, we're not doing that. So
Yeah. Mm. Way above my pay grade, but I mean, I'm willing to turn a screwdriver if it's ever needed. That
holler
I
at me,
can
bro.
do.
Yeah, we'll set that up.
Buddy, what you got, man? I see your little button going on and off.
Yeah, I'm just waiting to jump in there. First off, I'd like to say that I play a pretty mean tape recorder or a kazoo, maybe. I don't know, but yeah, no, man, he's got a lot of. He's the busiest man I know. He's got a lot going on. Just to keep up with him, we're lucky to have this. We've promoted Refuge on our show, and I'd like to, have him come out and talk just a little bit about Refuge and what it is and what its purpose is. So that's what he can do next, if he would.
Sure. I mean, I'd be honored to. So Refuge Medical, probably 6 years ago now, I had this barn at my house, and everybody thinks barn, like like a little red building with white trim, and maybe there's a cow there. That's not the case for this barn. This barn needs to be hit with a bulldozer. It's missing two walls and half of a roof, right? And so I'm out in the barn and I've got these, totes full of this nylon gear, and I'm messing with IFAC pouches, individual first aid kit pouches. And I'm like, well, this one kind of sucks because of this, and that one kind of sucks because of that. I might have had a whiskey or two, and I had some cardboard. It was the lid of a pizza box and a roll of duct tape. And so I had me a little arts and crafts time. And so I taped up this cardboard pattern of, if I could have a first aid kit, this is what it would look like. And so I brought that to a buddy of mine that had a sew shop. And I said, hey, how much to make me one of these? He goes, I have no idea. I said, cool, here's $1,000, figure it out. And so a few weeks later, he's like, hey, your kit's ready, you can come pick it up. So I go pick it up, and apparently $1,000 bought 6 of these things, not one. So I had the Bear First Aid Kit Gen Zero, and I'm like, this thing's pretty cool. I'm embarrassed by it now. That's how far we've come, right? But at the time, I'm like, this thing's pretty cool. So I sent it to some friends of mine, some active service guys, and I'm like, tell me what you think. Well, one guy writes back and he's like, it's really cool. He goes, but when it gets wet, it's really hard to deploy this inner pouch. You should make it a little bit bigger. I'm like, awesome. Thanks for the feedback. I don't jump out of helicopters into the ocean, not my job description. So I hadn't thought about that. And he goes, yeah, if you make that change, we'll take 50 of them. Okay.
So that's a problem you want to have right there.
Yeah. So I call my buddy at the stove shop and I'm like, hey, you still have that pizza box thing? And he's like, uh-huh. I said, cool. Can you make 50 more? And he's like, yeah, give me like 6 weeks. Like, cool. And so another buddy writes back, hey, if you make these little tweaks, we'll take 100 of them. Okay. I'm like, I think we're in business here. So we start making these first aid kits, and we've now grown from, in 5 years, to more than 53,000 customers, products on 4 continents, all branches of the armed forces electively, civilian applications, law enforcement, EMS, fire. We've trained about 10,000 people in pre-hospital trauma medicine in all of its various forms. And 164 people are still alive because we showed up to work, and 10 babies have been born. And so that's where Refuge came from. And the mission there, our mission statement hangs up on a banner inside of our HQ, which is to save lives while in service to the Father's kingdom and experience the abundance of his provision and blessing. And about 18 months ago, I vertically integrated one of our sew shops, meaning I bought them and they now work underneath our roof. And so we have our own sew shop where we manufacture American made products in house. And we've got 2 other American sew shops that are subcontractors for us that take our overflow. And about last fallish, I got this crazy phone call. It was like, hey, what do you know about DARPA? I was like, the people who invented the internet? They're like, yeah. I was like, that's it. That's all I know about DARPA. I think they killed that guy that made that car run on water, the dune buggy thing. And they're like, yeah, we don't talk about that. I'm like, okay, cool.
And killer robots.
And oh, brother, you have no idea.
Oh, we'll touch that one later.
so they're like, hey, we're gonna email you a Zoom link. I'm like, okay, do you want my email? No, we got it. Okay. And so I get the Zoom link, and it's for this DARPA MASH program, which is Medics Autonomously Stopping Hemorrhage, which is trying to teach robots to do frontline surgery for non-compressible thorax hemorrhage, aka bleeders in the box. And I sat on this Zoom call for about 5 hours with 184 other people on the call, and I realized pretty quick there were about 5 people on the call who had seen blood before. 3 of them were in uniform presenting on behalf of DARPA. The other 2 was me and one of my lead instructors, Mike, and everybody else was just nerd squad, which makes sense because robots. But so I put it together a submittal for DARPA, and I basically said, hey, I think your program is stupid, and I think that a lot of people are going to die if you're dependent upon robots to do field expedient surgery with a 2-hour window for efficacy because your patient will have been dead for 1 hour and 45 minutes. So rather than trying to teach the robots through large language models and AI and blah, 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 machine learning, and have the robots do surgery on non compressible thorax hemorrhage. What if we use the robots to pick all the low hanging fruit and to buy the medic's time back so that the medic and the physician can do the most important thing that they have to do? And DARPA was like, bet. And then that program got classified. And so now we're doing that. We're also working on a developmental contract for the United States Marine Corps in a similar vein. So,
I just don't think that I want to have a robot working on me if I got a hole in my body.
yeah, yeah, I don't either. And so,
When you said DARPA, I was thinking like medical beds, like med bays or something where you go inside and a robot works on you inside there. But look, realistically, you're talking about combat type of injuries that have to be worked on instantly. I saw a video of you in your refuge medical shop sticking your finger down into a hole for blood coming out. And
yep,
I mean, you have to do that instantly.
yep. And so that's the thing, right? Uh, they're trying to. So you've seen Hegseth and Trump, right? AI is the new Manhattan Project, right? They're treating it the same as nuclear weapons of World War II, and there's a lot of disparities there between computing power and frankly generalized IQ of the population between China and the United States of America. The Chinese average an IQ of about 130, and Americans average an IQ of about 100. And so, and I'm an American, and I'm a corn-fed white guy. I'm I could be offended, but I'm not. It's true. And so, when we look at the disparities from a technological standpoint, one of the things that AI does, and I'm not a big fan of AI, or at least generalized AI, one of the things that it does is it closes gaps because the computer is doing the computing, not the human. Look at what Lucky Palmer is doing with Anduril with these heads-up display ballistic helmets, all of which are running a meshy network so that everybody can talk to each other. And they're using burst communications there because they're having issues, or I should say, the DoD and DARPA anticipate having issues with anything that emanates on the modern battlefield because it's targetable. And so the Chinese are several steps ahead of us as far as weaponizing AI, which is why Hegseth and Trump are doing as much as they can to get Grok and Gemini and all these other programs onboarded militarily to streamline the DoD's warfighting processes. You also see that manifested currently with they just put out an executive order, I think a couple of weeks ago, limiting salary cap for all defense contractors, which we can argue one way or another. But rather than spending $68,000 for a 10-pack of steel pins from Raytheon, they're just 3D printing them now. The DoD itself is additive manufacturing for a cost of about $6. And so there's a lot of streamlining of processes right now. That's an
That doesn't
anticipation.
sound so bad to me. Does it sound bad to you?
I don't think it's bad at all, other than the fact that it's an indicator that we are likely to be using those processes in the near future.
Yeah. Well, and Headset went down to I heard the speech that he did with I think was it SpaceX or with Elon Musk, whatever it was. And basically he sat there saying, we need weapons of the future and we think you can build them for us.
Hmm.
That's pretty serious. I don't know if Elon Musk is I don't know how those youngsters at SpaceX and all that think about building weapons, but that's not something that they do that we know of, at least at this point.
I don't have a whole lot of fidelity on whether or not SpaceX has a weapons program. My concern with SpaceX would be the ideological alignment of the people performing the work.
Yes, exactly.
Um, Insider threat is the most dangerous threat. And just because somebody's got a security clearance, that don't mean shit. So Anduril is currently they're the darling of the defense industry re AI currently. But there are disparities between the United States and China, and as far as warfighting capability is concerned, and there's pros and cons on both sides. So, United States has the largest expeditionary military in the history of the world, right? We're like Oprah with carrier strike groups. You look underneath your chair, you get a CVN, and you get a CVN. Everybody gets a CVN,
I want
right?
one.
I listen, man. Other than the operational costs, I'm in. Uh, but so China's ability to counter that, they technically have more ships than we do, although 90% of those ships are really they're boats, not ships. But what China is doing and has been doing is building dual use infrastructure. And that's something that the United States hasn't done. And so, for example,
They
a
have the
lot of
minerals to build the chips too. I'm sorry to cut you off, but isn't that true? They've got most of the
Mhm.
minerals that build the chips and the computer stuff.
Yeah, depending on what it is that we're talking about technologically, they control somewhere between 80 and 90% of the precursor
Right.
to all
Mhm,
technology.
mhm.
Which is why you're seeing the United States federal government and Department of Defense partnering with these different mineral companies and mining companies now in the United States of America, because both economies, both China and the United States, we're both racing towards the bottom right now. Regardless of what the news media propaganda says, we're both racing towards the bottom. And all you got to do is just look at the valuation of silver. Okay. My wife and I bought some silver 3 months ago, and we bought some more silver 3 months ago and paid, I think it was $52 an ounce for it. And I told her the other day, I said, "Hey, babe, we've doubled on silver." She's like, "What?" I said, yeah, we should probably buy some more. Okay. So both economies, both China and America, our economies are racing towards the bottom. And the current assessment is that China will win that race to the bottom because they have more centralized control over manufacturing, industry, technology, et cetera, whereas the United States does not. Because we're supposed to be capitalist. We're capitalist with an asterisk on the end. And so that's why you see the DoD streamlining processes, but it's also why you see the DoD and the Fed investing in these manufacturing and mining and energy outfits, because all of those things, those are all precursors setting the conditions for survivability of the American populace and the American military in the next coming war. And it's coming, unfortunately, but it is coming. Or I should say, at least the United States Department of Defense is convinced that it's coming and is acting as if it is coming.
Well, now isn't this part of the reason why we're trying to get Greenland? I mean, they've got the minerals are underground that we need for the AI and all the other stuff, plus the strategic location of it between Russia and us, and the fact that China and Russia both want it and could take it at any given time. But just the thought of us trying to buy Greenland, which by the way has been tried for many, many times in the past. That one thing is splitting the country and
Mhm.
heading towards some sort of a I don't want to say civil war, but it could. The way things are looking on TV right now, it sure could.
Well, when it comes to civil war, I think the conditions have already been set for civil war, and we're currently in the gray zone stage. It just hasn't gone fully kinetic yet. Um, Greenland, my favorite explanation as to why Trump is after Greenland, I saw this on the internet, therefore it must be true, is because there's a 50,000-year-old UFO on Greenland that's stuck in the ice.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And that's where all of our technology has come
Oh my
from.
god.
And so it's a race to the UFO. And I think the most plausible reason that we should be chasing Greenland is we all know if you play the game Risk, you get 5 additional armies if you control all of North America. But yes, we do have. So anything that's going to come from Russia is going to come over the Arctic Circle, right? And so Greenland, the United States has already invested a significant amount of money and time and effort into Greenland. We want that early warning system, but let's not forget Canada up there. 40 million of our homies up above the imaginary line in the snow. We've got Carney just fell in love with Xi Jinping again, like 2 days ago, as of the time of recording, where China is committed deeply and Canada is committed deeply to China. And so we have a threat immediately on our northern border, and Americans are very blasé about Canada. It's like, well, what are they going to do? Ride a moose across the line and shoot us with a bow and arrow? They don't have any guns. They don't. But there's a lot of Chinese up there. And if you look at what China has been doing with their Belt and Road Initiative in the Western Hemisphere, Monroe Doctrine 2.0, they have encircled the United States of America all the way around. So,
And they're in the United States. I mean,
oh yeah.
there's the numbers are very high that they're here and operational as well.
So depending on who you ask, as far as total Chinese that are in the United States of America, the low number that I've seen is 4 million. The high number that I've seen is 20 million. These being not just, dual citizenship or American citizen Chinese descent, but undocumented Chinese that are here. And I know, like in Oklahoma, there's a lot of weed farms. And one county around here, there's 29 marijuana grow operations. 27 of the 29 are owned by the CCP. The other two are owned by Russians, all of which are tied to organized crime.
Is that legal?
Well, it's legal-esque. It's so what happens with this is it's all above the board, right? And so in this one county where there's 27 grow operations that are owned by the CCP, that's all above board, but they're producing revenue that's legitimate above the threshold of detection revenue that they then have to do something with. So one particular grow operation got raided because they had a bunch of illegals there. And when everybody thinks illegals, we think south of the American border.
We think Mexicans.
Right. We don't think elsewhere. So they had over 100 illegal military age males of Chinese descent there. And they had Connex boxes dozens of Connex boxes. The guy who had been running the grow operation had been in the country for more than 30 years legally. And what he was doing with his legal revenue was he would just buy 2 to 4 AR-15s a year and get 10 to 12 magazines for them, and then 10,000 rounds per rifle. And he'd been stocking Connex boxes full of this stuff and armor and enablers and blah, 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 all the things. And he's got 100 plus military age males. There were 100 there that day when it got raided. And there's 27 in that one county grow operations. How many more are there around the country? And is it just grow operations or there are multiple other businesses that are fronts for this type of activity? And the answer is there's multiple types of businesses that are front for this activity. And so that actually gets into capitulation. You brought up World War III and Civil War 2.0. What does that look like? One of the things that most people aren't tracking on is what's called capitulation. What that means is it's the basic premise that our air quote elected leadership will not even put up a fight, that they will just give up and sign the country over. And that's something that I think most people haven't even considered. If you think about our current air quote elected air quote representatives, we know that most of them are already sold out. They're already bought and paid for. Why wouldn't they capitulate?
All right. So just to be clear, what you're saying is turning the United States over to another country?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
No way.
That's so the current assessment from the Alphabet Soup Boys, whose intel flow that I am in, puts the capitulation likelihood. Now, this is important. 10 years after Everything Everywhere All at Once, which begins with the Chinese attack on America. Touch on that in a minute. So within 10 years of that event, the likelihood of capitulation is 48.5%.
Holy shit.
Just about a coin toss. So we already have these elected representatives that are not operating the best interest of the country because they're bought out. If you look at the West Coast, look at a lot of these major cities, these very blue cities where you see socialism, which is, light communism being pushed, but, Mondami in New York City, for example. All these cities, high population density areas where they are more liberal, more socialist, that's all a precursor to communism. Okay, so you push that Overton window far enough, the new boss is just like the old boss. And here's the thing with capitulation, depending on what capitulation looks like, we may never know that instead of allegedly our elected representatives representing our best interests and operating as a constitutional republic, that no, we're not. We're America 2.0, under the guise of freedom and liberty, that are actually being controlled by a country half world away. So that's covert capitulation. Overt capitulation involves actual enemy ground forces here in the United States of America. There's also a probability to that, and most people can't wrap their brains around that, because they say, it's impossible to invade the United States of America. We've got the Pacific on one side, the Atlantic on the other, lots of borders. We've got the longest navigable riverine system in the world, in the Mississippi River.
Mm-hmm.
We've got two mountain ranges, the Rockies and Appalachia. You can't invade. Well, they're already here. That's the thing. They're already here. The FBI says that just Muslim extremist terrorists, just them, there's already 4,000 known cells here. And there's only 3,000 counties in the country. So there's at least one cell for each county. And when we think, Islamic extremism, we think, maybe S-Vest, maybe AK, maybe, but these are 8 to 12-man teams patterned off of an SFODA, and they're training. And that's just the Muslim extremist threat. Doesn't include the Chinese, doesn't include the Russians, doesn't include half a dozen other countries, frankly, doesn't include the Israelis. And so when it goes hot, not if, but when it goes hot, all these different factions are going to be vying for control, regional control, throughout the United States of America. And so what does Civil War 2.0 look like? There's going to be a huge component of balkanization here. It's going to go from national to regional, like real quick.
Okay, now I'm scared. I don't think I have enough ammo.
Oh, let's talk about that. So Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, you may be aware, recently they had an $89.2 million contract that was disclosed, where they were making, serious putty for naval special warfare. And that place exploded.
Literally exploded?
Literally exploded.
Oh, shit.
What is not being talked about, what hasn't been disclosed, is that they also made almost all of the nitrocellulose for everything from 5.56 ammo up to artillery rounds. And so we have two places left in the country that make that stuff, manufacture and assemble that stuff. So you've got Lake City up in Missouri, and then you've got McAllister in Oklahoma, kind of central Oklahoma. And that's it. And so currently, nobody is feeling the effects of an ammunition shortage, because very few people in the middle of January are buying ammunition. They're usually paying off their credit cards from Christmas. And then somewhere around February, we're about a month out from Valentine's Day, and they'll buy some roses and a card and maybe a teddy bear, and maybe they'll go out to dinner and, whatever. And then somewhere in March, the temperature is going to start to change again, and people are going to start to train again, go out to the range or go do, SUT or whatever it is that they do. And they're going to expel some ammunition, and they're going to go to buy some ammunition, and they're going to realize that the ammunition stockpiles that we have been working off of since that plant exploded, November, October of 2025, those stockpiles haven't been replenished. So AAC Ammunition, which is a subsidiary of Palmetto State Armory, they put out a press statement saying, "Hey guys, we're so sorry. We can no longer offer ammunition on the civilian market because of our defense contracts. Please forgive us." That's what was stated publicly. What they didn't state was they closed the doors to their ammunition plant because they can't get nitrocellulose and they can't fill their defense contracts either. All that to say, the ammunition that we have is the ammunition that we have, and there's likely to be a run on ammunition in March because they're not making any more of it. And speaking of which, so McAllister here in Oklahoma, they make, you might have heard of the Moab massive ordnance air blast, or mother of all bombs, 20,000-pound bunker buster, and everything from 500-pound dumb bombs to JDAMs, Hellfires, all artillery rounds, all that's made in McAllister.
And it's pretty awesome to watch when you've actually seen one. It's something else. It is badass.
Well, I know a guy who, we'll just say, used to be, he's a vet former soft dude, and he was instrumental at the executive level in the city of McAllister. Just say that. And the Chinese tried to buy an old concrete plant that had rail frontage directly next to Lake City. And what they were trying to put in was oh gosh, it was a fertilizer plant.
Oh man.
Can anybody say explosives?
Yeah.
Yeah, my buddy was like, and the city council was like, why? It'll be great for the economic development. He's like, no, nope, we're not doing it. And they're like, well, what could possibly go wrong? And he's like, I don't know. They could blow up McAllister. So
Yeah, you just gotta watch Bugs Bunny and you'll know all about that.
yeah. And so I've been dancing, and I haven't stayed on the topic longer than 30 to 60 seconds. I apologize for that, but it's a lot, right? There's just a lot going on out there. Um, so especially when it comes to like Civil War 2.0, I think the conditions have already been set, and it just hasn't gone fully kinetic yet.
I believe we're in it right now. I think the it's when you say Civil War, everybody thinks there's going to be gray uniforms on one side, blue on the other, and there's going to be a line, and people are going to load up their muskets and shoot it at each other, and then take a step and load it up, and that's not what it's going to look like. What we're seeing now in Minneapolis, L.A., Portland, that's what Civil War 2.0 is going to look like. What you see on the news about what's happening in White House, and this is my opinion, of course, but that's Civil War 2.0. We're there, and early phases, I believe. I agree with you on that, but it's not going to be a kinetic. There'll be some skirmishes, yes, and it might even pop off to where it's full go on both sides. But um, I actually went to Serbia and Bosnia during that whole thing in the '90s, and it it's hard, man, when your neighbors don't look like you, or maybe do look like you, but have a different religion and different thought patterns. Who's friend or foe. You just have to know the people, so you know it's going to get messy.
Hmm. It'll definitely get messy, and one of the things that so I believe that it will begin in the most populous areas first, and then spread out from urban areas to suburban areas, and then possibly, depending on what your lines of drift look like, move from suburban areas out into rural areas.
Can you touch on lines of drift, because people, they don't really, we've used the term a little bit, but I don't think everybody gets it.
Okay, so to simplify as much as possible, right? Lines of drift. Maybe if somebody's ever been a deer hunter, right? And like this time of year, you're out in the woods and the vegetation is off, and you can see where the trails are. Where do they move, right? And so they typically move from a bed down location to where water is at, to where food is at, and then back to a bed down location. They make these little circles, or little triangles, and you can see the trails where they move. Well, people are creatures of habit too. It's one of the ways we find bad guys is pattern of life, right? And so we don't want to think that we're that predictable, but if you were to audit your actions and behaviors for a day or two, you'd realize you're very predictable, as am I. We're all kind of set in our ways. And so when it comes to lines of drift, people tend to travel on improved roads, then unimproved roads, and then trails, right? And so the greater the existing roads are, if there's an exodus from high population density to low population density, the likelihood is they're going to travel upon primary roads first. They also tend to travel down in elevation, not up. It's very rare that people gain altitude, right? And depending on what region you live in, your topography is going to be different. I'm in the foothills of the Ouachita Mountains, which is, you know, part of the Ozarks. And so we've got some hills and some small mountains around here. People aren't drifting upward, they're drifting downward. Water also collects downward, right? Water, you find it in your valleys. That's where your streams, your rivers, your creeks are. Interestingly, people will follow streams and creeks, but they don't like to cross them, which is funny to me because, like, you're going to get wet anyway, right? That's what we would call a linear danger area. And so they may follow creeks and streams along the banks, or railroad lines is another one, or high tension power lines, the right of way or gas right of ways, areas of least resistance. And so those lines of drift, that's where people are going to move, or typically the untrained and the barely trained are going to move along the paths of least resistance. The more trained, better trained are going to move against the lines of drift because it removes that predictability. If you're patrolling and there's a trail, right? Like, you don't walk on the trail, walk parallel to the trail, 50 meters off of it to one side, so where you can see it, but you don't want to get ambushed on the trail. Well, most of these people are going to be walking along interstates and county roads and stuff like that. So understanding, for the listener, you can do some quick Google foo here on what a line of drift is and understand, do an area study, a map recon of where you are and where do people drift. And so from a strategic relocation standpoint, I don't want to be on a line of drift. And if I am, there's ways you can mitigate that. There's things that you can do, but that's probably a different conversation. But people move. And especially when we are in a resource contested environment, people move, whether they want to or not. And the high population density areas are net consumers of resources. They don't produce energy, they don't produce food, they don't produce water. They consume those things. Well, when the stockpiles are depleted and there's nothing more coming, or what is coming is being heavily rationed by whatever faction is currently in power, people will leave those areas and go to a less populous area to have access to resources. It's all a game of resources. And where they move is typically along those lines of drift.
And so, in your opinion, what is a time frame when you're going to see that national line of drift from the larger populations out to the rural areas and stuff?
It's a great question. So I think that right now, all indicators point towards 1/3 chance by early 2027 that everything everywhere all at once has occurred. If it goes full-blown kinetic in these cities, high population density areas, I would say no later than 72 hours out from 0 day do people start moving. And if you think about a city like Dallas, right? Dallas Fort Worth Metroplex, um, you can't move in any cardinal direction from Dallas proper without moving through suburbs first before you end up in rural areas. And it'd be really hard to find wilderness at this point in that area of Texas. You got to move a few hundred miles before you're in wilderness. Wilderness meaning the absence of people and infrastructure. Okay. So I'd say within 72 hours, although kind of the textbook answer here is 3 missed meals. And so with 3 missed meals, I think you start to get localized chaos. You get riots, you get people stealing from each other locally until those resources are depleted. This is the other thing. There's pre-existing networks right now of good guys and bad guys, law enforcement, EMS and fire, and National Guard, and the Crips, the Bloods, MS-13, Tren de Aragua, Hell's Angels, all these other groups, they fall somewhere on the spectrum between good and bad. And so in a contested environment, all these groups are going to be vying for as much control of territory and resources as possible just to be able to self-sustain. And then once resources continue to become depleted, there you're going to come into conflict with one another. We're seeing the same thing geopolitically right now on the world stage. There's an entire thesis that we're going to a tripolar world, which will be the United States controls the Western Hemisphere, China controls China and the Pacific Rim and all that region there, and then Russia gets Europe as an economic zone, and the EU or Europeans and Russia are going to have to learn to play nice with one another. And where the potential fault lines are going to occur is in Africa. Because there's a lot of resources that haven't really been extracted out of Africa yet. And there's 27 different foreign militaries on African soil right now. So that's the same concept, just on a global scale rather than a local scale. Locally, once those resources are depleted, whatever power structures exist are going to begin to start clashing against one another to control territory, because territory controls resources. And then as resources get depleted, they will either move to a more resource-rich environment, or they'll start conducting raids to go and acquire resources and then return back to their home base.
Okay, back up a second here, and I know we're getting late in the game here. You say kinetic. When I hear the word kinetic, I'm thinking that's when bullets start flying.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm not naive to think that the left, let's call them, aren't armed, but they're nowhere near as armed as us.
Yeah. So here's the thing.
Tell the truth.
So there are fewer of them that are armed, but the ones that are armed are training very intentionally. The other thing too is like a lot of the training that I have received throughout my lifetime has been from military veterans. Okay, I did not serve myself, but my family's full of them. My Rolodex is full of them. I employ a bunch of them. I kind of speak that language, right? And so I've had a lifetime of training. I've had 6 Green Beret mentors to date. Why? I don't know. The Father's just smiling upon me. It's a blast. So like, the tenets of unconventional warfare are just they're beating into my head at this point, but not the military as a whole and SOF as a whole. They're not homogenous in their ideological structure. So there's plenty of people that have worn the uniform or are wearing the uniform at all levels, from your standard infantry grunt all the way up to your Delta Force CAG operator, okay, that you would think you would have a high amount of ideological alignment with. And the answer is not necessarily. And so we know documented cases right now, for example, Antifa, BLM, et cetera, these far left Soros funded, they're not protesters, they're paid agitators. We know they are being trained actively by people with very interesting backgrounds and capabilities. They're currently, what we're seeing is very sloppy. You're seeing pictures of these guys out of Minneapolis where they have plate carriers with no plates in them. They got mag shingles with no magazines in them. They've got rifles with a front sight but no rear sight, whatever it might be. Currently very sloppy. But I'll tell you what, they are training and they're absolutely presenting themselves, which is something that the right, for lack of a better term, the more conservative, maybe more traditional people are not doing. And one of the things I've been hearing my entire life is just you wait till the people that don't want to be involved get off the bench and get involved. Well, when is that going to be? Because it wasn't COVID, it wasn't 9/11, it isn't right now. At what point are the people that don't want to be involved actually going to get involved? Um, and I think a lot of that has to do with the conservative mindset we want to conserve, we want to protect, we have more traditional values. And so it's like, don't start a fight, son, but damn well end it if it comes to you. Well, if it hasn't come to me individually yet, do I end that fight? And I think that's something a lot of people are wrestling with right now. But I don't think that many regions in North America are going to be safe. And they are training, and there's a lot of them. They're very well funded, and they're actually very well organized. I'll tell you this thing that just went down with Don Lemon in Minneapolis. If those ICE protesters walked into my church when I was preaching, and this is not hubris, it would have been a bloodbath. It would have been there would have been no talking. It would have been a bloodbath. And that's the other thing, too, to be frank, the pussification of the American male and the teaching that Messiah was this just really nice guy. And that in order for you to be a good Christian man, you just have to be a really nice guy it's wicked and it's biblically inaccurate. And so I'm seeing slowly an awakening of these men that are actual men, rough around the edges, calloused hands, but gosh dang, they love Messiah and they're just trying to be a better person, right? I'm seeing an awakening of those people going, I have a biblical responsibility to protect my family, to protect my loved ones, to protect my community, my church, my ecclesia, the body of Christ. And I don't know how. I guess I got to get trained. I guess I have to start doing stuff. And that's slowly starting to come to a boil. And it's my hope that it continues to come to a boil, that more and more men will wake up and realize you have a biblical responsibility to provide for, protect, and bless your household. And whatever the external threat is, it is my job to stand in between that threat and whatever it is that I love and make sure no harm shall come to it. That's my job. So you walk into a church like that with dozens of people screaming, shouting, megaphones, laying hands on people. 2 seconds in, Glocks and ARs should have started going off
Absolutely.
like that fast.
Yep.
And it didn't happen because And dude, we train church security. I have 2 upcoming church security.
God forbid if those people were armed.
Well, they should be.
No. I'm saying the people that came in, if they were coming in to kill people,
Yeah.
it would have been over in a heartbeat.
Oh, it would have been a bloodbath in the wrong direction, right? So we train church security with Refuge Medical. It's one of my favorite classes to do because there's just it's nonstop shattering of myopic paradigms over and over and over again. And for every 10 that I bid, we will perform 1. And the other 9 classes that we don't perform, it's not financial. It's that the church leadership, the pastor and the elders, are concerned about the risk of training at their property. And I'm like, well, which is a greater risk? We can train in a controlled environment with all kind of constraints in place to keep it safe. They're realistic, but it's safe. Deconflict with law enforcement. We have medical professionals on standby, tons of security protocols. We're not using live ammunition. Like, it's as safe but realistic as it can possibly get. Or somebody walks in here and starts shooting, which is more unsafe. But leadership, and this is all across the country, we bid work from coast to coast. 9 in 10 churches that I bid work for, whoever it is that I'm liaising with will come back to me and say, man, we appreciate you so much. Thank you. Just I can't get the elders to buy off on it. Well, why? Well, they're concerned about the safety. They're concerned about the image. They don't want to traumatize anybody at church.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, we need to pull our heads out of our asses and get realistic about what the threat looks like.
They think the same thing about schools as well. They do the same kind of thinking. But you were saying before about responsibility. I agree with you 100%, and I am responsible for my family, my piece of the earth. But I don't feel any responsibility whatsoever to go up to Minnesota and fight those people that are up there doing what they're doing. I just don't feel it. Like I should have to.
And so I agree with that, and I think that's part of why uh, these far left paid agitators haven't been met on the battlefield of life by anyone other than federal troops yet.
Exactly. Yes. But that in itself, though, why are the federal troops or even the cops not taking them down? They're obviously doing illegal actions. They're causing trouble. Why aren't they? If I went downtown and I walked out in front of a police car in the middle of the road, stopped it and said, "You're not going any further," they would shoot me.
Mm-hmm. So part of it is, again, where are these things happening? This goes back to setting the conditions for conflict. They're happening in places where the local and regional judiciary is going to be favorable to the air quote protesters, right? And so when we talk about capitulation in Civil War 2.0, right now it kind of looks like we've got the federal branch, or I'm sorry, the executive branch of the federal government and the Department of Defense, and to a lesser extent, law enforcement, EMS, and fire on one side, and then the judicial and the legislative on another side. And on the judicial side, all these district judges, when you think about who appointed these people, were they appointed because of competency or were they appointed because of ideology? You've got Biden judges, Obama judges, Clinton judges in some cases that are issuing edicts and credos that go against the directives of the federal government, the office of the chief executive. And we saw that during the 45th presidency. We're seeing that during the 47th presidency right now. All that to say, these federal troops, they have orders, but they don't necessarily have top cover.
You know what? I watch these things on TV. I'm sure all of us do, and I just feel like I don't know if I would be able to control myself. I just feel like somebody would get shot. I'm being honest about it.
Mm-hmm. It's going to come to that, right? And I guess just to differentiate here, a lot of us, if you're a person of faith, a person of the book, you've probably heard, "Thou shalt not kill." And I just want to clarify something. In the earliest texts, the Septuagint and the Masoretic texts, it doesn't say "Thou shalt not kill." That came much later with King James. It says "Thou shalt not murder," and killing and murder are 2 very different things. Murder is premeditated and it's a heart condition. Killing, unfortunately, is just sometimes required in the preservation of life. And so if we go back to this idea of somebody running into your church, if they were armed and they started shooting, what would you do? Well, if we're in a deadly force engagement, the only way to stop that is to be better at deadly force than the bad guy. It's as simple as that. They escalated to that level, not me. Now I need to respond in like kind, preferably as quickly as possible, because statistically, the longer the engagement goes, the lower my survivability is. Okay. That's not murder. That's killing. And it's killing for the preservation of life. I didn't decide that this guy should come in and start shooting. He did. Right. And that goes back to that more conservative principle of don't start anything, but damn well finish it if it comes to your doorstep. As far as self-control is concerned, the number one way to avoid all of this stuff, whatever it might be, capitulation, civil unrest, World War III, Civil War 2.0, is don't be where the problem is. It's as simple as that. Just don't be where the problem is.
Agreed.
I'm not in Minneapolis because, you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. There was a lady who they drove a minivan, their minivan coming back from a basketball game, family, husband, wife, 6 kids, got stuck in a counter ice protest. Some ice tear gas landed underneath of their car, exploded, car gets filled with tear gas, blah, blah, blah. Everybody's got to be rushed to the hospital. And they're like, oh my gosh, we don't know what happened. Well, don't go to the basketball game that's right next to the ice protest. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. Right. And so there's some people like that where my heart breaks for them, but I also kind of want to slap them upside the head. And you remember those Mr. Yuck stickers they used to put on stuff that was poison?
I do not.
Oh, you never saw the Mr. Yuck sticker?
Were they the flavored ones?
No, that would have been funny.
What are you talking about?
All right, so they used to have these stickers, right? Like for like all the cleaning chemicals underneath the sink. It was like a smiley face, but except it wasn't smiling. It was grimacing, and it was called a Mr. Yuck sticker, and it was supposed to let kids know, hey, don't drink this stuff. It's yucky. Okay. It's also
I had a different picture of what you were talking about. I was thinking scratch and sniff, something like that.
No, not that. That would have been hysterical.
Ooh, smells bad. Don't lick it.
But it's like these Tide Pods, right? Like the Tide Pod challenge. If you have to tell somebody that they shouldn't be smoking Tide Pods, you should those people shouldn't be reproducing. I think in large part, what we are experiencing as a society is we have nerfed all the edges, and that we've taken away a lot of the consequences for people's reckless actions. And I think that's intentional, and that's part of setting the conditions again for war and capitulation. But if you play stupid games, you're going to win stupid prizes. And unfortunately, a lot of these people are too oblivious to know that they're playing stupid games in the first place. Well, hopefully for your listeners, you've got a modicum of situational awareness, and we understand. Don't go to the basketball game that's right next to the ice protest. That's a bad idea.
That's all we do on this show, man. We constantly push and push for common sense. And I think that our listeners, I mean, we're at 229 episodes. We've been doing this a long time. And I think our listeners, they get it by now. But the new people coming in, that's the ones I fear aren't there yet. I know we did a lot of survivalist stuff, but as a prepper, is there anything that people might, just a couple of quick things that they might do right now just to get ready for whatever?
That's a great question. So the devaluation of our currency is accelerating. And so I know that not everybody has savings squirreled away, but if you do, I would recommend, Dave Ramsey stuff. Keep 6 months of operational expenses on hand for your household, and the rest of that, I've been converting into assets nonstop. And by assets, I mean water infrastructure, electrical infrastructure, food storage, et cetera, et cetera. And at my YouTube channel, Bear Independent, BEAR Independent, there's a playlist called the Prepper Classroom. And if you don't know where to start, you don't know anything, right? Just start at the Prepper Classroom. And it's literally me from 5 years ago standing in front of a whiteboard explaining Barney style. All right, this is food storage. This is what you need for food storage. This is how much you need. And then next, water. Here's how we calculate how much water we need based upon how many people you have in your household, et cetera, et cetera. I recently reviewed all that footage, and it all still stands. It's great intro level to intermediate level preparedness stuff. I think the economy, the bottom is going to fall out of the economy within the next 12 months, if not significantly sooner. And so I would make whatever moves you need to make if you can make them. The next thing from there is you need a food plan, you need a water plan, and you typically hear you need a gallon of water per person per day. That's not been my experience with Grindstone deployments. It's more like 3 and 5 is better. You need a gallon of water to drink because you're going to be exerting yourself more when the electrons stop flowing and you're fighting for your life. Okay, so you need a gallon to drink. And then you need water for food preparation, water for cleaning your tools, your pots, your utensils, all of that. And then you need water for sanitation. And so, 5 vectors for disease: flies, fingers, feces, food, and fluids. And so, something as simple as, did you wash your hands after you pooped? Well, I'd love to, but I don't have any water. Okay. It's not just gross, it's dangerous, because if you do that long enough, we're all going to poop ourselves to death. And that's going to be a problem.
Mm-hmm. Dysentery, bad.
Yeah, 100%. Cholera, ew, gross. So, if you start at a gallon of water per person per day, and if you're in the suburbs or something, okay, get a rainwater barrel. All right, well, it's only 55 gallons. That's better than 0 gallons. Start there. Okay. So you get a water plan put together. And then the other thing that everybody sleeps on, because it's not sexy, it's not a new Daniel Defense or a BCM or whatever. Palmetto's coming out with a new shotgun. Okay, cool. Where are you going to poop? Okay. This is really important. And it begins with, I have a 5-foot shovel and I've designated a corner of my yard. That's the latrine. Because again, if you don't have a sewage plan, and right now, if you're in an urban or suburban area, you're not on septic, you're on city sewer. When the electrons stop, that stops working too. And just so we're all clear here, it is a basic foundational thesis for me that the electrons will stop. I've got myriads of data to back that with, but if I was the bad guy, the first thing I'm taking out is the electrical grid, and it doesn't have to be kinetic. It can be done via cyber. We actually just saw that the United States did that to the Venezuelan grid recently with the Maduro op.
Lights out, man.
Yep. And that exploit exists for our power grid as well. And we are not the only ones that have the ability to enact that exploit. So, where am I going to poop is very important. And then you stack food. Everybody, they love guns, they love ammo. And I'm a huge Second Amendment guy. But the likelihood that you're going to need to shoot somebody, hopefully, is going to be less than the likelihood you're going to need to eat. You're going to need to sleep. You might get some boo-boos, so you want a decent first aid kit. And then train. That's the other thing with preppers. A lot of people turn it into acquisition of stuff / hoarding without developing the actual skill sets to use said stuff. And so it's mindset and skill set over tool set. Tool set is our third priority. Stuff is our third priority. The first is mindset. The second is skill set. How do I use this stuff? And then lastly is the stuff. So I would absolutely be training. I would engage in every opportunity you can. And I'll leave you with this very simple but effective training for you. It's called the Main Breaker Challenge. Friday afternoon, when everybody's home to your house, go to the main breaker on your electrical panel and just turn it off. And don't turn it back on till Sunday night. And so you'll go 60-ish hours without electricity and cook food and sleep and communicate and keep yourselves busy and not want to kill everybody in your entire family because you're bored to death. Right? So, and if it gets too bad and we just can't, you admit defeat, you walk back over to the main breaker, you turn it on, and you resolve to do better next time. Super simple.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Man, you're a hardworking guy. It's you're tiring. I'm listening to you. I'm tired, but the dedication is not lost on us. I'm sure it's not lost on your people as well. We appreciate all the hard work you do. It's been an absolute honor you being here with us tonight. You're always welcome. Open invitation, Bear. Anytime you want to come on, you're good to go.
Thank you, Keith. And buddy, thanks for the invite, bro.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's been an honor.
My prepper brothers and sisters, could there be another civil war here in the U.S.? Could a modern-day civil war lead to the collapse of the U.S.? Well, consider this. Every great superpower in all the history of mankind has fallen or collapsed at some point in time, except the United States. The Russian Empire, the Mongolian Empire, the Spanish Empire, the British Empire, and the Soviet Union have all risen to a dominant position only to have fallen, declined, or dissolved completely. China has collapsed more times in its history than they would care to acknowledge. So yes, the US will collapse at some point in time, and the shortest route to that conclusion starts with a civil war. But unlike our first civil war in 1861, with the line drawn in the sand and two armies fighting over it, a modern-day US civil war would likely look much different, with low-intensity insurgency rather than traditional battle lines. Decentralized asymmetrical warfare, a fancy way of saying Red Dawn. Cyber attacks, sabotage of infrastructure like power grids and water, urban unrest and targeted assassinations by militia groups, hit-and-run attacks, smash and grabs, paramilitary operations and urban sabotage, targeted attacks on communication networks, internet access, hospitals, transportation hubs, and supply lines. We'll see corruption in all state and federal offices and highly localized conflicts within pockets of instability all across the country in both rural and urban areas. Social media would spread lies and propaganda rapidly through unorganized groups everywhere with no centralized control, leading to chaotic and unpredictable violence. We do not want a civil war now or ever. It won't be somewhere else far away. It will take place in our streets, in our homes and businesses, and on our phones and computers. We will see it, hear it, and smell it with every day that passes, and it will not end in our lifetimes. Now is a good time to think about what side of history you want to be on. Then prepare for it. Stay prepped, stay happy. Thanks for listening, and good night.